thing is, until you can erase 3 Februaries, shut up.
Where sports is the base, life and fun are the results. This is the Brian Snow Show.
Welcome back. This pretty lady that you see is going to help with the discussion of emotional baggage. We'll have Tenya come on in just a moment. You see her on your screen right here. But I'm going to deliver a warning. There will be some words that'll come out of my mouth that y'all usually don't hear. Why? Because the subject of emotional baggage gets to me. So I apologize well in advance. And as Tenya and I had a chance to talk before we came on the air, my favorite comedian is George Carlin. So we're going to have a little fun to navigate through emotional baggage. Please help me welcome Tenya Eickenberg. She joins me right now. How are you, my dear? Great to have you.
Great and wonderful. Thank you for having me.
All right, let's get to it. When I saw emotional baggage in your bio, I immediately connected and I said, all right, this is a guest I have to have on, because there's one simple question that I have when you start dealing with emotional baggage, and one simple question when you think you've dealt with all your emotional baggage. How the hell do you get rid of it?
Well, there are lots of different ways to get rid of it. The way I got rid of it was with energy healing and self-care.
Okay.
Most of my emotional baggage, half of my emotional baggage wasn't even mine.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That part I didn't know. Wow.
Yeah. Just like you inherit your eye color or your hair color or mannerisms from your parents, you inherit their traumas, you inherit their beliefs, you inherit their sicknesses.
Mm-hmm.
And those are emotional baggage as well.
Mm-hmm.
And
there's so many points that we can touch with this and dealing with emotional baggage. And you mentioned you inherit a lot of things from your parents. You also hear a lot of things from your parents about how you should live your life, which turns out to be total bullshit when you grow up.
It does.
True or false? It turns out to be total bullshit.
Absolutely. Because when we come into this world, we come into this world kind of like a blank slate. We may have brought in stuff from, if you believe in reincarnation, from previous lifetimes. You definitely have stuff that you inherited from your parents during conception. But for the most part, you come in almost as a blank slate. However, when you get to be 3, 4, 5 years old, that's when you start to realize that the adults in your life want you to behave a certain way.
Yep.
They want you to be a certain way. And so we become people pleasers at very young ages to please our parents. And we lose who we are. Most of us lose who we are. There are some kids who stick by who they are, and God bless them.
Exactly.
But most of us gather imposter syndrome and just start to be whoever we need to be to survive through life, whatever that may mean for some people.
That people pleasing bandwagon is a bitch to get off of for good.
It is.
Because you think you get off of it at one point in your life and you're doing good, but then all of a sudden you find yourself climbing the stairway back onto that damn thing. And you're going, wait, how did I end up back on this thing? And the ride gets bumpier, the ride gets slower. And finally you go, fuck this. And you jump off again. You scrape your knees, you scrape your elbows. You don't cry this time. And you're going, okay, now I'm good. Wrong.
Yeah.
Sometimes it comes to you again and again and again. I can tell you from experience, I hate that damn thing.
Now, there is a difference between people pleasing and taking care of people.
Yeah, there is.
There is a fine line between the two.
Mm-hmm.
I tell my clients all the time when I'm stressing to them that they need to do self-care. They need to put themselves first, starting now,
Mm-hmm.
because our first job when we come into this world is to take care of ourselves.
Right.
It's not, we're not born to take care of other people.
Mm-hmm.
When we have our own children, we're choosing to have children to take care of, but that doesn't mean that you neglect yourself.
Right.
That means that you make adjustments around your kids' schedule and their needs
Mm-hmm.
to meet your own needs so that you can be there for them.
So a fellow like me didn't get introduced to fatherhood until I was 40. And that was the birth of my baby girl, Donna. And it's still something that I feel robbed of because I was forced to give her up for adoption in 2013. 2014, I got to see her when she was 1 and she recognized me and jumped right into my arms. And a year later, she passes away.
Oh, I'm so
I
sorry.
was one of the last people to find out, and I exploded. I absolutely exploded because I finally thought that I would have a chance to go get her and the woman who I thought was my fiance at the time, but she was shielded by her family, which drove me absolutely insane.
Mm-hmm.
And then to find out that Donna passes away,
It's
I had to
heartbreaking.
deal with that alone for 18 months
Mm.
in Chicago, being homeless. And I'm surprised I didn't go completely insane at that time.
Yeah, no kidding.
I had to invent my own ways of dealing with it.
Mm-hmm.
And the best way I knew how to deal with it was to dive into my broadcasting, was to dive into my work. Is that a good tactic for people to do when dealing with emotional baggage, is to dive into their work? Is it productive or can it be counterproductive at times?
Both. Both. It can be productive because it gives you something to pursue. It gives you a passion. It gives you something to live for.
Mm-hmm.
However, if all you do is work and you don't allow yourself to grieve and you don't allow yourself to have those feelings, grieving doesn't mean that you're going to cry. Grieving doesn't mean that you're going to yell and scream and go into a state of depression. You may, but
Mm-hmm.
but grief is different for everybody. And it will hit at times that you don't understand why it's hitting you at that time.
Mm-hmm.
It may be someone says a word that reminds you of someone, or a smell, or a taste, or the way the sun is hitting the window.
Mm-hmm.
And when that grief hits, if you're in an appropriate space, allow yourself to feel that grief because it won't last very long.
Mm-hmm.
It may last. It may last 5 minutes. It may last a half an hour.
Right.
But in retrospect, that's not very long. But it's going to be hard.
It is.
But if you don't allow yourself to feel those feelings, they're going to get trapped.
Yeah,
They're
guilty.
going to get
Guilty as charged.
they're going to get stuck in the body,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to cause dis-ease and discomfort.
Yep.
And that's when you have degenerative disc disease or hip dysplasia or colds,
Yeah.
all kinds of diseases that we are led to believe are because of not exercising or not eating. Those are only part of it. The other part comes from not allowing yourself or your body to emotions that need to run through your body. Emotions are energy in motion.
Yeah.
So if you think of it that way, right? If you think of being mad as an energy ball that is ping-ponging around in your body,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to keep ping-ponging around until you let it out.
Yeah. It happens. It happens so much to me as a man in society, because what does society tell men to do? Hold it in.
Mm-hmm.
You're not
Yeah.
allowed to show feelings. If you show emotion and feelings, you were deemed weak.
Mm-hmm.
And that was drilled into my head by so many people for many years. And it got to a point where I finally said, I can't help it.
Yeah.
This is what I'm feeling, and it's got to come. It's got to come out. When I lost my baby, I was, I can honestly say for a year, I just lived in shock. And to this day, and I've expressed this to my wife and a lot of people, I feel like I was robbed of fatherhood.
Mm-hmm.
I got introduced to it late, had some grand plans for Donna, and they got stripped away from me,
Yeah.
to a point where I've had people make fun of me saying you didn't deserve her in the first place, which pissed me off.
I am so sorry that anybody would have the balls, to be honest, to say that to somebody. That is horrible.
It gets worse.
Oh.
There's a few people, even to present day, that say to me, she didn't want to be around you anyway. There are people that say to me, I should give this up, my broadcasting, that I need to just go get a job and be done with it. And you know who said that first? That like triggered something in me? My mother.
Oh, I don't know if it's my
Man, it's, and she's frozen right now. Yeah, we lost her. But it's the toughest thing to deal with when your mother keeps telling. Well, first of all, mom and dad both told me growing up, chase your dreams and catch them.
Okay.
For
I took my
years.
camera off because you're breaking up and I can't hear you. So I'm not sure if
Yeah,
it's my
that's
internet.
fine.
So I took my
That's
camera
fine.
off so that I can hear you.
That's fine. That's fine. For years, they told me, pursue your dreams and catch them. Slowly but surely, by the time I got to be a senior in high school and I graduated high school in 1990, the only person that was telling me that of the two of them was my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And dad kept saying, don't let anybody, including your mother or myself, stop you from chasing your dreams. So some things happened to me in life where I couldn't finish college. I leaned onto my broadcasting when I called my first game in 1995. And the first thing my mother kept saying to me was, how much are you going to make? And what are you going to pay toward the house?
Yeah. Yeah.
What?
Dreams don't matter much when there are bills to pay, is what I would get from that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's so much more to life than having to work and pay bills.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you
There
don't
is.
have life work coherence, if you can't get them to work together,
Mm-hmm.
then neither one is going to work very well.
I have been looking for ways for many years on how to deal with those words. And I'm going to give you this one, and I want you to analyze it and tell me what you think. When I was living with my mom in 2013, there was a night when the Bulls were playing the Brooklyn Nets in a playoff game. And my mother knocked, I was in the basement. My mother knocked on the door, opens the door, and she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm watching the Bulls game." "Who are they playing?" "They're playing the Nets." "Is that the team that Jay-Z owns?" "Yes." And my mother says, "I wish I could find somebody that'll make money like that." And I pointed to myself and I said, "You found him." She laughed and she walked away and closed the door.
Mm. That's That is heartbreaking, no matter how old you are.
I
No
couldn't
matter
even
how
watch the game.
Yeah, no
I
matter
couldn't even.
how old we get, if our parents put us down, if they manipulate us, if they bully us,
Mm-hmm.
it's heartbreaking. They could be 80 years old and we could be 50, and it would still be heartbreaking because you expect your parents to have compassion and empathy and to raise you up and
Yeah.
to always be proud of you no matter what's going on in your
Mm-hmm.
life. There's always something to be proud of with your kids.
I think in my case, it happened when my dad died in
Mhm.
2007 because a leaf flipped. Something flipped in my mother.
Mhm.
And it's taken me so long to talk about this on a consistent basis, even with my web series, Diary of a Mad Snowman, that I'm turning into a book. It took me so long to talk about this and to say it out loud, knowing I didn't have to ask for permission to say it out loud. But it's still
Mhm.
tough for men to do, to say out loud what they're feeling, because you've been taught for many years that your parents are there to lift you up no matter what happens. And to be perfectly honest, Tenya, I've said this to my wife, Jody, and she understood. I said this to a few friends and they understood. The only one that kept lifting me up in my adulthood was Pops, my
Mhm.
dad.
Yeah.
And in
Yeah,
so many ways that hurt because I didn't get the same energy from my mother.
I'll, when you can look at your parents from a different perspective. How was your mom's childhood? How was she raised? Was she loved at home, or was she meant to grow up fast? And this isn't an excuse,
Mm-hmm.
but our parents have trauma just like we do.
Right.
Our parents can only raise us with the knowledge that they have at the time.
Yeah.
Even if they are given different knowledge that may make our lives better,
Mm-hmm.
if they don't have the capabilities to put that knowledge into practice, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And say this isn't an excuse. This is not absolving parents of the poor jobs that they may have done in raising us.
Mm-hmm.
But when you can look at a different at that from that perspective, that they're only going off of the playbook that they were given.
Yeah.
And we're going off the playbooks that we were given.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes our playbooks get updated, sometimes they don't.
Yeah. Is it tougher for men in your practice? Have you found that it's tougher for men to speak out on what they're feeling because of the fear of being ridiculed or emotionally put in a box for speaking out on what they feel?
Um, when they are speaking to me, no, because even though I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a doctor, in my practice, there are things that come up that if they want to share with me, then they can. Typically, none of my clients will begin sharing a lot of their story until maybe the fourth or fifth session
Mm-hmm.
because they have to know that they can trust you.
Yeah.
And that goes the same for therapists as well. It
Mm-hmm.
takes a while for someone to trust a therapist to
Yeah.
tell them what's going on in their head, if they even can articulate it. But the men that I have worked with, and it has been few because I normally work with women, but the men that I have worked with, over time they do begin to trust me and they do begin to open up and let their feelings out.
Right.
Especially if during a session I hit on something that they thought that they had gotten over or something that they had forgotten about. It
Mm-hmm.
might jog some tears, it might jog some anger, but then we just work through that as well while we're on the phone.
What was the toughest thing that you had to get through, or one of the toughest things that you had to get through? And what tactics did you use to get through it?
Probably the toughest thing I had to get through was setting boundaries with my mom. Because my mom would often send emails in big red letters, kind of yelling whatever it was that she was mad about.
Mm-hmm.
And it finally got to the point where I had PTSD every time I got an email or a phone call from her.
Yeah.
And I finally sent her an email and said, I will not answer any more emails, texts, phone calls where I'm feeling bullied, manipulated, or put down.
What my mom used to do to me when I finally did get a couple of breaks in doing play-by-play, when the checks would come to the house, she'd open them.
Invasion of privacy.
And I was looking forward to stacking some money away and getting another apartment because I lost my apartment in 2011 and I had to go live back with my mom. One minute she would tell me, save up your money so we can get an apartment. The next minute, because I was doing my broadcasting and not holding a quote unquote regular job, she was in my face.
Yeah.
When are you going to do something? When are you going to bring in some money so you can pay some rent around here? The last straw came in 2014 after all of the yelling and the screaming about, is that really your baby? I finally looked up at mother and I said, you know what, Mom? I signed the birth certificate. That should be enough.
Mm-hmm.
Physically, Donna was not my baby, but I saw her be born into the world.
Yeah.
And when the doctor came in saying, who's the father? I jumped up and down and said, give me the birth certificate.
Mm-hmm.
And there are days I feel like I've been robbed.
Yeah.
Some days it's easy, some days it's not.
And that's life.
Mm-hmm.
Life is not going to be easy every day. If we don't experience heartache and pain and grief and anger, how are we going to know what happiness and joy and excitement feel like?
Right.
And when we can also look at emotions as just messages that our body is giving us,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're taught that anger is an uncomfortable feeling. We're taught that grief is an uncomfortable feeling. But if we allow ourselves to sit with those feelings and sit with those emotions and allow ourselves to walk through them, they're just as good as the excitement and the joy and the happiness. There are some people who cannot sit in joy and happiness for very long because that pains them. So don't label them good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
They're just emotions that we have to relearn to feel because we've been told not to feel them.
So there's a lot of new programming that has to be done to undo the programming that you came into this world with, that you were taught from a young age that you're supposed to feel this way when this happens or feel that way when that happens. And once you don't, you can either quickly deal with that crossroads and say, look, this is how I feel and I'm sticking with it. Or you can just put yourself in the box, which is what most of us do, and say, I'm not going to deal with it right now. And I am guilty of such because there were so many boxes that I had stacked up and piled up, even to present day, from stuff I didn't want to deal with, like people trying to come after me on social media and discredit me. To the point where I had someone blatantly lie on me in 2016 saying I was inappropriately touching 2 female students at Marquette Catholic High School in Michigan City, Indiana. Despite the entire school, teachers, students, and all, saying, no, he's a good guy. He never rolls like that. I got fired and was asked not to come back.
I'm so sorry. Yeah,
since then, it's been a struggle and a half to get back to something solid.
Mm-hmm.
But that day I got that phone call was one of the first times I finally exploded. I finally exploded and let out everything I was feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I say to this day, when I find the sumbitch who did that, I'm sticking a lawsuit up his ass.
Karma will get him.
We'll leave it here for now, but I would love to have you come back for a part 2 of this.
That'd be great.
Tenya Eickenberg joining me here on the program. Please support the show with a Cash App donation so this disabled broadcaster can get enabled and help his family. The tag you need is $Tallman Dr. K50. I appreciate y'all for tuning in, and we will be back in just a moment.
Where sports is the base, life and fun are the results. This is the Brian Snow Show.